Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I'm KT, your friendly neighborhood personal trainer. And per title, in today's video, we are going to go over animal versus plant protein. Now, there's been an ongoing debate on which one is better for you in terms of health and ethicality. And while this video is not geared to push anyone in either direction, I'm only going to present you on the information and allow you to decide what is best for you. So let's do it. It's possible that you may be wondering, well, what are proteins? Why are they important? So proteins are a large, complex molecule that we have within our body that serves several different functions. For the purpose of fitness and health, the primary function of protein is for muscle growth and muscle repair. So when we're in the gym, working hard, let's say we're doing those bicep curls, our muscles are tearing, they're breaking down. And so protein is going to come in to repair those muscle tears, which will then make the muscle grow bigger. So that's why it's important that we consume protein in our diet. Now, protein is, like I mentioned before, a large, complex molecule. So it has building blocks, and those building blocks are called amino acids. So amino acids come together to then form a large protein molecule. There are 20 amino acids that can be arranged in different ways to produce these proteins. 11 of them our bodies produce naturally, but the other 9 we have to get from our food. And this is where the debate comes from. Should we get those 9 amino acids from animal protein, or should we get those 9 amino acids from plant proteins? And that is what today's video is going to cover. So let's start with plants. Plant protein are things like tofu, soy, beans, nuts, legumes in general, rice, and even some vegetables like broccoli and spinach have small quantities of protein in them. However, plants alone are not complete proteins. What I mean by that is, of the 9 proteins we need from our diet, maybe beans have 4 of the amino acids, and then maybe rice has 6 of the amino acids. So if you just ate beans, you wouldn't get the complete 9, and if you just ate rice, you wouldn't get the complete 9. However, if you combine the 3 amino acids you get from beans with the 6 amino acids that you get from rice together, they make a complete protein, and you can have all 9 of them. So they make a complete protein together, but not on their own. And there's nothing wrong with this. I mean, it shows that you can get protein from your vegetables. It just requires a little more effort. In general, because plant foods are things that naturally have whole grains or high in fiber, things like the legumes, the seeds, the nuts, and things like that, they naturally are going to reduce your chance of heart disease, meaning it's going to increase your heart health. It could lower your risk of type 2 diabetes. It could lower your blood pressure. It could lower your cholesterol. So these are some health benefits in general you can have from having these plant proteins in your diet. These plant-based proteins are also packed with things like phytochemicals and antioxidants, which are also things that can help your body regulate your blood sugar. So for this reason, a lot of people that are on a plant-based diet tend to be of lower weight, and a lot of people that convert from a animal-based diet to a plant-based diet tend to lose weight in the process. So far, it looks like there are a lot of advantages to being on a plant-based diet. And it seems that the only downfall so far is that they don't give you really a complete protein, but given the receipts of what I just mentioned before, it might not be that difficult to combine 2 things together to make a complete protein. So we do have that. However, that doesn't go to say that being on a plant-based diet automatically means you have a healthier lifestyle, because just like there's ultra-processed things in an animal-based diet, there's a lot of ultra-processed things in plant-based diet too. Go into any grocery section in the freezer and you get, your plant-based section, or you get plant-based this and plant-based this. But if you ever take a moment to look at the ingredients, sometimes they are full with a lot of saturated fats, a lot of sodium, which are things that have the opposite effect to your health. So just because it's plant-based doesn't necessarily mean it's healthier. On top of that, you can also deep fry a lot of things. I mean, potato is technically a plant-based food, right? But if you're deep frying your potatoes all the time, where is that going to get you in the long run? Tofu, you're deep frying your tofu all the time. So if you're finding yourself eating a lot of ultra-processed plant-based things or deep frying a lot of your plant-based materials, you could be in the same boat as someone on an animal-based diet that is eating similar things. So just keep in mind, it's not what you eat, it's how you eat it. Another potential con that I don't think a lot of people think about when they're thinking of a plant-based diet is that they tend to be higher in carbohydrates. So let's think about the beans and rice combination I gave you before. So yes, together they are a complete protein, but alone, beans have a lot of carbohydrates and rice have a lot of carbohydrates. So together, that's also a very high carbohydrate meal. In fact, it's more carbs than it is protein. So imagine if you were eating that every single day. That could give you really high spikes in your blood sugar. Although when you're thinking of things like the beans and the rice, that especially if we're talking brown rice, that are very, very high in fiber, and fiber tends to slow that release of sugar in the blood, it still could be problematic because that is a very high carb meal. And if you're eating that kind of combination every single day, that's a lot of carbs that you could be consuming and potentially storing in your body. Because as I have mentioned before, maybe not on this channel, but on my other social media pages, carbs have two purposes. Either they're going to be used immediately for fuel or they're going to be stored for later purpose. And so if you don't want it to be stored, you're going to have to use it. So unless you are an endurance athlete where you're running all the time, you're doing things like CrossFit or some kind of things that's going to use a lot of energy, require a lot out of you to burn off those carbs, it's most likely going to get stored. So that could have the opposite effect where it could then cause your blood sugar to go up, which could increase your type 2 diabetes, which could also lead to you gaining weight. So also keep that in mind when you're thinking about these plant-based proteins, which again, it's not to say that it's bad. It's just to give you the information so that you can be mindful and balance it with other things. While we are on the topic of athleticism, is plant protein really the best one for muscle growth? So can plant protein help you support muscle growth? And again, you have to think about what works for you. How much muscle are you trying to grow? How much muscle are you trying to preserve? What is your goals when it comes to muscle growth? Because yes, for example, 1 cup of beans could have up to 40 grams of protein. But when you think about beans, how much can you realistically eat? So if you need 160 grams of protein a day, are you going to be able to eat 4 cups of beans a day, for example? On top of that, things like beans are fulfilling. Like I said before, they're high in fiber, so they take up a lot of space in your stomach. So how much of that can you eat? How much beans? How much tempeh? How much tofu can you eat in a day on a day-to-day basis to reach your protein goals? And again, this is not to say that it's impossible. As I mentioned before, it just requires a little more effort. There are plenty of vegan bodybuilders all over the internet. And while I don't know what their day-to-day looks like, they could be consuming a lot of pea protein shakes. They could be consuming a lot of those ultra-processed plant-based proteins that I mentioned earlier. Like, you never know. So do your research, actually look at what some of these vegan bodybuilders are eating in a day. If it's something that you feel like you can do, by all means, shoot for it. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to think about yourself, your goals, what you can do, and try to formulate a plan around that. The last point I want to make on a plant-based diet is that there are some deficiencies to consider, specifically iron and vitamin B12. While there are some vegetables that contain iron, it is non-heme iron, which means it isn't readily absorbed within the body. And while there are some vegetables that contain vitamin B12, the quantities might be so small that it might not be as effective. But again, we have evolved in Western medicine, so if that is important to you, be on a plant-based diet, you can always take an iron supplement or vitamin B12 supplement. So there's workarounds. To sum up plant protein, we have pros as because the foods are plants, you get a lot of fiber, you get a lot of phytonutrients, you get a lot of antioxidants and things that are naturally going to help you have a healthier heart, healthier body, because it's going to decrease your risk of type 2 diabetes, it's going to decrease your risk of high blood pressure, it's going to decrease your risk of heart disease. So we have that pro. Another pro is that even though they're not a complete protein on their own, you can put them together and still get a complete protein, which can help you with your muscle building and things like that. Our con list is that, again, they aren't a complete protein, so you have to do a little more effort when it comes to eating your plant proteins together. B, because they are high in fiber, most of the times it could be very fulfilling, so it could potentially reduce how much you realistically can consume on a day-to-day basis, which could make it difficult for you to reach your protein goals depending on how it's being consumed. Plant protein does tend to be high in carbohydrates, so that could be an issue, especially if you're not an endurance athlete who needs a lot of carbs. The last con is we have that lack of iron and vitamin B12 and plant-based foods, but we can always take a supplement to supplement for that. So that is plant protein. Let's get into animal. Okay, animal protein. We all know what these are. So this is things like meats, eggs, and dairy. The benefit to animal protein is that these are complete protein. So just eating one of those, you're getting all 9 of those amino acids that you need. There has been some controversy on red meat in particular, where people have stated that it increases your risk of heart disease and things like that. Where on the other hand, there also has been some research articles that says that that isn't very true. So basically, the statement that red meat isn't the best for your health really doesn't have any consistent, conclusive data to support that theory. So we're gonna scratch that until someone does. In fact, similarly, that's a complicated word, y'all. Similarly to what I said about plant proteins, it's about the types that you are consuming. That applies to animal protein as well. So if you're eating your lean beef, your lean turkey, your lean chicken, that might be better for you than eating the ultra processed things like hot dogs or deli meat or things like that that are high in saturated fat and high in sodium. It's all about moderation. So while eating lunch meat or hot dogs or sausages every now and then isn't going to kill you, having that on a regular basis when it's high in that saturated fat and high in that sodium could have risk factors on your health. Animal protein also provides us with that vitamin B12 that I mentioned before and heme iron, which again is readily absorbed in our body. In another video, we'll go over why vitamin B12 and iron is even important in our body in general. But for the sake of this video, just know that it is. And also, foods like certain type of fish are packed with those healthy fats, which are those omega-3s that we need in our body as well. So these are some benefits that you can get from animal protein. Because animal protein is a complete protein, it's also said to enhance protein synthesis, leading to us gaining more lean muscle mass. So, whether you're an older adult trying to preserve that natural decline of muscle mass over time, or you're an athlete looking to put on a significant amount of lean muscle mass, animal protein could help you do that. So far, animal protein sounds like it's got some good benefits for us. But of course, I have to present you with the cons as well. The first one up, it has been said that cooking meats at high temperature is known to produce carcinogens, which of course could then increase your risk of cancer. But of course, you could just combat that by not cooking your meats at high temperature. We also have to consider the ethical and environmental effects of consuming animal protein. For example, there are many people that believe that killing animal for the sole source of human consumption is immoral, especially when those same nutrients and vitamins can be consumed from somewhere else. And those same people are most likely concerned with the living conditions of those animals. And when you think about this, in the land before time, animals were hunted. Now they're mass produced, so they have to be kept in, what we call mass producing farms in order to keep up with the demand. So on these farms, the animals aren't really living in their natural habitat, having the freedom to wander around, eat the things they would like to eat. Instead, they're confined into these very small spaces. They're pumped with the antibiotics, hormones to help them grow faster and bigger, things like that. Their diets aren't really what they would normally eat. They're fed whatever they have to be fed. So the living conditions just aren't the greatest for the animals. And with reason, a lot of people just don't like that. Thinking about that kind of condition that the animal is living in, they don't feel that lifestyle is worth it just for them to eat it when they can get the same kind of nutrients from other sources in the world. And on top of that, like I mentioned, how the animals have to be pumped with these antibiotics, these hormones, and sometimes steroids as well. Well, there's no saying that you are what you eat. So those things could then also end up in your body, which could have an effect on you. As we all know, there's been, I'm sure, plenty of studies and plenty of times that you can even remember where a protein has had to be recalled because there was some kind of virus in it, and then that virus has spread to people that have already bought and consumed it. So there's always a risk factor when it comes to that. So that kind of sums up the ethical reasons. But now let's talk about environmental. So as I mentioned, these animals have to live on farms. In order to make more of these farms, we have to have the space, which means we have to cut down more trees, which leads to deforestation. And again, some people aren't really cool with that, with reason, because we need our trees. They help with the oxygen. As we know, we have a lot of air pollution, especially if you live in a really tight, busy city where there isn't much land, all you get is gases and things that you're breathing from cars and buildings and things like that. So less trees we have, worse for our ozone layer. And lastly, we have to consider the animal waste in general. So when the animals are being slaughtered and things like that, where is all that waste going? So is that going back into our environment? Is that having to be disposed somewhere else, which is then leading to more pollution? Of course, similar things can be said about plants. I mean, I believe there was a recall on cantaloupe once upon a time. There was a recall on romaine lettuce once upon a time. So a lot of people are also concerned about the quality of soil that their plant is growing in and what kind of pesticides and preservatives are used to maintain them. So to sum up animal protein, the pros with animal protein is that they are a complete protein, so they require a lot less effort when it comes to getting that complete protein and building muscle. On the cons list, we have to consider the ethical and environmental issues that come with consuming this animal protein, as well as the temperature that we cook it at, because there's the potential risk of releasing carcinogens in our body that could increase our risk of cancer going forward. So how do we get over these hurdles? So you received the information on plant protein, you received the information on animal protein. How do you decide which one is best? And that is for you to decide. What are your fitness goals? What are your health goals? How is your health already? What is your body type? What is your lifestyle? What are your values? These are some questions to consider when determining if you want to go plant-based or if you want to go animal-based. It is usually the cons of both sides of the spectrum that leads people in one direction or the other. So let's go ahead and combat those. So with plant protein, I mentioned some of those cons. So ways that you can combat those is to, one, just be mindful of what you're eating and how you're preparing those, putting in the extra effort that is going to be required of you to make sure that you're getting the complete proteins. If the quality of the soil is important to you, consider buying organic, consider buying from farms where you can see and know what is going on that produce before you consume it. And this isn't to say the organic is better, because nutrient-wise, you're benefiting about the same. It's more so about the quality that your crops are being grown in. You could also consider only buying the fruits and vegetables that grow in season. So not buying a watermelon in the winter when you know watermelon doesn't grow in the winter. Buying your butternut squashes and your acorn squashes in the fall and the winter, because that is when those crops tend to grow. There's also a list, if you look into Google, where it shows you which crops have more pesticides than the others. So you could consider buying the ones that are high in pesticides, organic, and the ones that are low in pesticides, you can buy those non-organic. So again, doing your research is going to be beneficial for you. To combat some of those cons associated with a plant-based diet, one, consider cooking your meat at a low temperature instead of that high temperature. And if the quality of the animal's life, conditions they have to live in is important to you, similar to a plant-based diet, consider buying organic or buying from your local farm. In these conditions, the animals are free to roam like they usually would. They're free to eat the kind of diet that they normally would in their environment. And they also are free of antibiotics, steroids, and things like that. In fact, if an animal becomes ill on the farm and has to be pumped with antibiotics, they are then sold to a non-organic farm in order to keep up with the compliance of organic. Yes, of course, it might be a little more expensive, but when it comes to your life, your morals, and your values, it could be worth the investment. And with both diets, you can always make sure that you limit the amount of ultra-processed foods that you eat within the community of both, because that is going to have lower sodium for you, lower saturated fat, lower risk factors on your health. And speaking of both, you could just have both. You don't have to just have an animal-based diet or a plant-based diet. You could have both. You can reap all the benefits that are associated with a plant-based diet, and you can reap all the benefits that are associated with an animal-based diet. A good balance of the two could be occasional animal protein, but maintaining a high plant-based diet. But yes, I hope that information was helpful for you. I apologize if it was a little choppy. It's been a very weird day for me since I woke up this morning. I felt like I wasn't able to communicate my thoughts as they were coming into my brain effectively. So I hope that this comes together well once I edit it and put it together. But thank you for stopping by. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, what you're thinking, what you're leaning more towards, animal, plant, or a combination of both. If you like this video, consider, smashing that thumbs up for me. Maybe share this with a friend that is also in the same boat as you, who's wondering about the benefits of both of those. And if you like informative videos about health and fitness, workout videos, health tips, consider subscribing to my channel. to stay in the loop and learn more as we embark on this journey together. As always, stay up. Don't forget to crush it, and I'll see you in the next video.